What in the world is happening with my hair right now? I have no clue. I'm trying to make it look somewhat normal for this. Hello YouTube. So it is Friday the 24th, and this has been an interesting week for me because this week I had my first in-person audition and callback since the pandemic. Oh my god. So I thought I would sit down and talk about it a little bit. It has also been like a weird week for me, like emotionally, mentally, and physically too. So definitely not my best week to be going back to a couple in-person theater things. But yeah, let's just talk about this week and being back in person at an audition. So first things first, with this being a weird week for me, I just had a lot of like client work for Lexi Grandma that I was working on, and a lot of things that I had to like focus on and get done, and a lot of emails to read and lots of things to do. So it was kind of taking up a lot of my brain space while I was going into this week, and then kind of throughout the entire week while doing an audition and a callback. And then physically, why this was a weird week was that my hip, my left hip in particular, started really bothering me this week. Really, no reason why, no idea why it started hurting me. On Tuesday, it was in a bit of pain. I had trouble sleeping that night before. Wednesday, it was really, really bad. And then yesterday, it was pretty much back to normal. So it felt like it was just like needed to pop, and it was locked in a weird place. So now it's a lot better. It's still like kind of sore, but I feel pretty much back to normal. It just feels like my hips are tight, which they always are, with a little bit of extra pain. So that's why, part of why things were a little bit weird this week. But let's get into the auditions part of it. So right before the pandemic, like I said in my last video, I was in final callbacks for a couple regional theaters and a national tour. I had gone in like maybe a couple days before the pandemic started for an appointment for this national tour I was in callbacks for, and then like as the pandemic was happening, I had a callback appointment for March 17th, I think, to go in person and sing, and then that got transferred to a digital submission. So since then, everything has been self-taped. So it's nice to kind of go back in person. For this first one, it was just for a regional theater for their season. I was just kind of like, this will be a good way to just kind of throw myself back into auditions and get back into that world. I was also thinking that this call wouldn't be that crazy because it was an open call. Like there's always a bit of it where it might be a little bit insane with how many people show up and that kind of thing. But I was also thinking a lot of people have moved out of New York since the pandemic, so maybe there won't be that many people there. The sign up for this started at 8:30 in the morning, and it was running from like 9 to 1 for singing, and then 2 to 4 was dance callbacks. So I was just like, I'll show up at 9, maybe I'll be like late 70s to early 100s in the numbers. That's totally fine. And on the day of, I'm following audition update, I'm trying to see how the lines are going. People so far in the morning were saying it wasn't that bad, but people did start lining up in front of the building at 6:30 in the morning. So I was like, oh God, is it just a lot of new people to New York who are like not sure how audition processes are gonna work? Or is it like people who still stay in that mindset of showing up first? I show up at 9, I'm number 226 on the list. But there was also like a problem with the list that like the numbers were a little bit out of order. So I was technically like the late 100s. I really didn't know, but I was like, okay, we're just gonna wait this out and see what happens. I brought my laptop with me, so I was able to do a little bit of work. Got to see some friends from auditioning as well. Just nice to see people and catch up and kind of be back in the studios. It was a long morning of waiting to see what was going on. Things seemed to be moving pretty fast at first, and then it kind of just slowed down quite a bit, but then it started to pick up a little bit at the end. They decided to go through lunch, which was from 1 to 2 for the singing. So I was able to get seen for singing at 1:55 p.m. And right before that, it was initially told that we were going to be singing 32 bars, so like a solid minute of singing. And then they changed it down to 16 bars, which is usually a standard for auditions. And I was like, that's fine, I can sing my 32 bar cut a little bit fast. And then maybe like, probably about an hour before I was supposed to go into the room, they're like, actually, we're switching this to 8 bars. 8 bars of music is maybe 20 seconds of singing, depending on like what kind of cut you're singing. I was like, are you kidding me? I hate singing 8 bars of music. And I was like frantically going through my cut, trying to see if I could find a way to make it an 8 bar cut. I decided I would do like the 16 bar cut version of this and sing a little faster because it feels like it's an 8 bar cut. It feels short. And then they cut back to us a little bit later and like, actually, it's only gonna be 16 bars. You get to sing a little bit more. And I was like, okay, great. But I'm still just gonna do this 16 bar cut version of this just so it goes a little bit faster. At this point, I was like, I just want to get in the room and sing, and I don't really care what happens. For this audition, that was kind of my mentality. I was like, I just want to get the first one out of the way and just do it and see what happens. So 1:55, I go into the room to sing. It was also my first time singing in front of people in person since the pandemic. So it's just like going through the protocols of going over to the accompanist while wearing my mask, telling them about all of my music, saying hello to everybody while I'm in the room, taking my mask off, doing my introduction, and then like actually singing. I was pretty nervous, honestly, for this, just because it was the first time I was singing in front of people in a very long time, and also the first time I was singing this song in front of people in person instead of on video, because throughout the pandemic I wanted to completely change up my audition book and find new materials and find things that I wanted to sing and enjoyed singing. So it was my first time singing this in front of people. I had warmed up in the morning, and my warm-up did not go well because I was like very much breathing up here instead of breathing like down and low where it needs to be when you sing, so you can like have actual support. And when I sang through my song a couple times in my warm-up room in the morning, it didn't sound good, and I was like, maybe the nerves will just take over and I'll sound fine when I actually go into the room, which is what happened, because it had been quite a few hours since I had warmed up, and I was talking to a lot of people, so my voice was more like in my body when I went into the room and sang. But the singing actually sounded surprisingly great. I thought it sounded really, really great, because sometimes I like really overthink how I sound in an audition room, and when I sing, sometimes if it's like belty or a little bit more on the more contemporary side where it's not as floaty high notes, I tend to sing very heavy, so it's like very stuck in my chest and doesn't like land in the small parts of the throat or land in the mask like it should. But with this, like, it's a more belty song that I was singing, but it was like very forward sounding, so I was like, wow, okay, my nerves didn't take over in the way I thought they would, which is where usually I end up like staying very heavy here singing, and then like it kind of comes out screamy. It was a belty song, but it didn't sound like I was screaming, which I was very happy with because I was nervous it would turn out that way. But it actually ended up sounding really great. In the room, they were like, that was really, really great, like very emphatically. And then I didn't get a dance call back. I was like, okay, great, thanks. And I just left the room and was like, all right, cool. That was a great way to spend my morning, sitting around and waiting, as I used to do all the time. And then I just went home and went on with the rest of my day. But for a first audition back from the pandemic, that felt pretty typical of what I was expecting it to be. I was hoping I would have gotten a dance call back because they were doing some dance shows in this season, but it's fine. There's other opportunities for other shows anyway, so just good to kind of get that out of the way. For the callback that I had this week, I got this callback last Saturday while I was babysitting from a self-tape that I filmed while I was on vacation in Utah. So for the self-tape, they wanted us to send a slate, which is where you say your name, your height, your location, if you have an agent, that kind of thing, and anything else that they ask for, singing, some lines that they sent over, and a dance reel. So I decided to send over my singing clip that I have of this actual audition song that I sang on Tuesday. That's like my go-to clip just to kind of send out to people now, as well as my dance reel. And then I filmed while I was in Utah the slate and the lines, because those were the specific things that I had to film. I didn't have already kind of ready that I could just throw together and send over. So while I'm in this hotel in Utah, I didn't take my camera with me on this trip, so I was like, okay, I can film it on my phone, the quality of it will be fine. Then they also said they wanted a full body shot, so just so they can see height and look and that kind of thing. In this hotel room, there was no real good space where I could stand and get a horizontal full body shot, because that's what they preferred. They wanted landscape. So I ended up having to go outside of this hotel, standing like, there's like a street and then me standing in like an eating area that they have outside this hotel, screaming over cars and motorcycles driving by, being like, hi, my name is Tori Cyclic. And then I filmed the lines that I had to do in the shower, because it was the only spot in this hotel room that I could find, one with somewhat good lighting that looked like nice-ish, but two, where I could set up my phone to be leaning against something that wouldn't fall over. So I had my phone on like the shelf of the shower on top of Sean's razor box, and then I'm like standing in the shower. I had it like zoomed in nicely so it looked like pretty well put together. And I filmed these lines and edited everything together, and I was like, I felt okay about everything, but I was just like, if I don't get a call back, that's fine, because I've been submitting to a lot of self-tapes, and like half the time you don't know if they actually watch it, and just kind of seeing what would happen. Filmed those, sent those over, wasn't really thinking much of it, and then I got a call back. So I was like, great, okay, cool. Got a call back from the self-tape that I didn't think was amazing, but was fine, and great, cool. So Thursday comes and I have this call back. I had to bring with me a song to sing, so I decided to sing the same song I sent into the self-tape, just because they'd seen it, it got me to the callback. Might as well, if they wanted to see more, they would ask to see more. Same lines that I prepared for the self-tape. And then if they wanted to ask us to come back to a dance callback the next day, then they would have asked for that. So this was yesterday, this callback. Wednesday night, I was preparing for it, but I was also dealing with a client situation that was getting me a little bit stressed out. So I dealt with that on Wednesday night and was a little bit stressed about that, and was preparing the lines and was feeling feeling good about everything and feeling like memorized and prepared and worked on like the different acting intentions I wanted to do for the lines as well as for the song. I go into this callback on Thursday, feeling pretty good about how everything's going, but like starting to get a little bit in my head and kind of getting in my own way, which is a tendency that I have with auditions, which I hate. I tell the accompanist how I want him to play the music for singing, because I was doing the singing first. I walk in, I say hello to them, I sing my song. The accompanist played a little bit loud and a little bit faster than what I had planned, but I was able to keep up with it and do well. And I felt like the singing went pretty well and they seemed pretty happy with it. And they were like, great, okay, let's do the lines. You're gonna be reading this kind of as a monologue. You're gonna have the introductory line and then you're going to start talking. So I had brought in the paper with me that I printed out of the lines, hoping that I wouldn't need it, but I grabbed it and was like, had it in my hand just in case, because the lines were like individual lines and I wanted to make sure I got the order right and that kind of thing also. Even though I was memorized, I just wanted to have that as like a safety blanket. But then as I started the lines and started doing them, I was making choices and then made some that I didn't like. And then like in my head halfway through it, I was like, I'm not getting a callback for this. I'm not getting a dance callback. And I was really frustrated with myself because I knew I could have done it better. I did it better on the video. I did it better when I was practicing at home. I just got in my own way, which is really frustrating when that happens, when it's like something you're somewhat in complete control of when you go into the room. And then you just mess it up on your own. So I do the lines and I'm like, finish it. I'm like, yeah, I really didn't feel good about that. I don't think I'm gonna get a call back, hoping I would because of all my dance experience on my resume and hoping that they're just like, we liked what we saw on the video and we liked her singing. Maybe let's keep her for a callback and see what happens. But thinking more along the lines of, I probably won't be getting a callback because the lines did not go well at all. And then they asked me to leave the room for a second so they could discuss. And then the monitor comes back on. They're like, we don't need to say anymore. And I was really upset with myself, like mentally beating myself up for it because I was like, I could have done so much better. I was prepared, but I'd just gotten in my own way and it's just really frustrating. And I was like, oh, like I was just so mad at myself for this. But then I was texting my sister Morgan as well as a friend of mine and talking about the whole audition. And they were like, well, it's your first callback back since the pandemic, your second time being in the room in front of people. Like you need to be less hard on yourself about this because like the casting directors and all of them, they're gonna understand that people are gonna be a little bit off because it's been such a long time since people have been in the room. But you also need to be a little less hard on yourself about this. And as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I'm being way too hard on myself about this. Like I need to give myself a little bit more grace. Like, yes, I can be upset with myself for not doing the lines well, not doing what I wanted and not getting the callback that I wanted to get for the dance callback. But then I was also thinking, well, you know what? They're right. It is only second time back in the room since the pandemic. Things happen. People are human. You make mistakes. Problems happen like that. Also, the casting directors are super nice. They've seen me a million times for things. So I know that it's not going to be something that's going to stand in the way for me to get another job at another point. I feel like they'd be understanding about the fact that I just got in my own way and I feel like they could tell that I just wasn't on my game as much as I usually am, especially since this casting director has seen me through final callbacks for different things too. So I was very frustrated with myself, but then I had my day yesterday to be sad and was annoyed with myself for it. But today I'm just kind of like, you know what, just move on to the next thing. Like literally I was home yesterday, lying on the couch, submitting to a bunch of other things and got another random self-tape to do this morning. So I'm gonna film that probably tomorrow and that's due on Monday. And then I'm filming another self-tape on Monday. So you just have to move on to the next thing. But yeah, it was definitely a bit hard for me to leave that room and be like, oh, I didn't get a callback for this. I should have done better. But you know, on to the next one. That's how it works with this industry. You have to deal with the rejection. And I definitely was better with dealing with the rejection before the pandemic because I was doing it a lot more, being in the room a lot more, being around people a lot more. But since it's been such a long time, it's been weird to get back into it and be like, oh God, all my emotions are all over the place from this year of staying inside and not seeing people. And then I'm auditioning for something that I would love to get a job with. And then when I don't do well, it's really frustrating because I don't have a job to come out of it. So that's kind of where my head was at with getting annoyed with myself over it. But yeah, so first audition and callback back were interesting. Not my best work, obviously, but definitely an experience, definitely something to keep in mind. It's been really nice to throw myself back into like my normal life before the pandemic. And also, I'm just happy that I got a callback from a self-tape because half the time with self-tapes, you never know if they're actually watching it. Like sometimes you think they will if you see like one view on your video, if you post it on YouTube or Vimeo, but half the time they just watch like part of it and they don't even want to actually see what you have. So I was really happy with the fact that I even got a callback initially after not doing doing auditions for a long time and just sending in self-tapes because of the pandemic. The fact that I got one, I was pretty happy with, but obviously I could have done better when I was actually in person. But yeah, those are just my ramblings and thoughts from this week. I have another in-person audition coming up in a week. I think it's the beginning of October, for an open call that I just signed up for, and I was like, sure, why not? Never know, honestly, at this point, what kind of job is going to happen. I still have self-tapes I'm going to be doing, hoping for callbacks from those too. It's exciting to be getting back into auditions and things like that and normalcy of my life before the pandemic, but it's definitely a bit hard transitioning back into that kind of world and like doing the thing of waking up early and trying to beat the line, which is really hard because you just don't know when people are going to show up in the morning, if they're going to be like 6 a.m. people, or everybody's going to be like a 9 a.m. nice little roll up and make it easy for everybody, or if it's going to be like your 300th in line for an audition that starts at 10 a.m. but people start the list at like 6:30. So it'll be interesting to see how life kind of goes back to normal in the world of auditions. I hope some of this rambling made sense. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want me to talk more about auditions and self-tapes and things like that and theater stuff, post-pandemic life, let me know in the comments down below. I feel like everybody's kind of on a different journey at this point, and getting back into the world. I was like, for me, I just want to get back the momentum that I had before the pandemic and really jumpstart things to the next level. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm putting into the universe and manifesting for myself, is getting to that next level that I want to reach and doing it, being successful, getting the jobs, booking things. That's what I'm manifesting for myself. Thank you guys so much for watching DFTBA, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.